It's time for the burning fires to rage in Seoul! Probably the one thing I'll say in this mission's favor is it sure is difficult alright, none of the other ones even come close to it, and it made me quick load more than the rest. Naturally, that isn't necessarily a good thing because it feels like such a difficulty spike with Gatling gun tanks and flying turrets that are armed with spotlights and also guns. Probably also doesn't help that this feels like the most linear mission so far, with barely any room for diverging other than maybe one or two entrances next to each other, especially in part 2. Choosing to save the pilots before marking the plane is nice though, even if it was sort of a pain doing so because the aforementioned Gatling gun turret, and I choose to accept it as canon. I get that the missions are supposed to be harder, but this sort of feels like a gut punch out of nowhere, and it definitely feels like it erred on the side of let's just stack it against you. It's time to head into the steamy hotness in Bathhouse. It's a shame, this mission is pretty good in the first half, but then it all goes completely to hell, ironically as the building goes to hell. The bomb defusal in particular has to be one of the most frustrating sections in the series, with thermal visor carrying soldiers running in while you have a timer for bombs, and getting them before they get you is rough to say the least. Like I said, it's a shame because the early half of the mission is alright, the option to go through a less guarded pool and using steam to scramble a turret are pretty slick. The meeting itself is alright and the final confrontation with Doug is actually pretty dope, especially choosing not to shoot so Sam stabs him instead. If it wasn't for the jarring action-centric sequence in the second half, I'd say it was a pretty good mission, but at least it ends on a pretty cool note, so it's not the absolute worst. It's time to become enlightened in Lighthouse. You know the game's going to get heavy when it starts out with an innocent man being tortured to death via electrocution in an attempt to get information out of him. One thing I can appreciate is the game giving you a forking path near the beginning, so you've got two different paths you could potentially take. Hooray for some good old non-linearity! It also nicely shows the game can throw your stealth game for a loop, since the final section is during a rainstorm where lightning might cause you to be visible if you're not careful. The opportunity objective is mostly along the way though, so if you're paying attention it's fairly easy to get it done without having to go out of your way, but it's only the first mission. Ultimately, I'd say it's a good starter map, both requiring you to adapt to a few situations like lightning or fireplaces without coming across too strongly since it's only the beginning. It's time to face the sunrise in Kokubo Sosho. It's funny, the first half of the mission plays out like Displace, even down to Lambert not letting you kill anyone, and it's also about as tough, which is pretty mild. The most interesting part is where some guards are packing shock rounds so it can knock you out, and you get some amusing role reversal where Sam is interrogated and you have to get out. The latter part is more like Bathhouse, ironically also spying on a meeting, but this is nowhere near as frustrating. It still has a timer and there are a couple of turrets that can pelt you, but at least the guards aren't equipped with thermal and you can EMP the turrets. Overall, not a half-bad finale mission, and the more difficult spot actually feels so much more reasonable while having good length and variety. It's time to navigate the sensual darkness in Penthouse. This one's pretty interesting because it's split into two different areas, 3 if you count the apartment with Dvorak, even though it's a bit more linear than the past 2 missions. No more hiding in the dark this time, Ninja Spy, you're going to have to actually deal with the camera since they have infrared. Luckily the EMP pistol makes them pretty non-threatening. The Dvorak section is easily the most entertaining part since you and a very friendly old man have to fire up one hell of an ancient punch card computer using tubes. Technically, you're not supposed to kill the National Guard, but you can, you'll just get chewed out by Lambert since shooting military probably doesn't look good for US intelligence. Pretty good mission overall, it has some twists and turns even if it feels more like a straight line than the last 2, and the infrared cameras can make return trips annoying. It's time to pop out those AAAs and battery. I'll give it credit, it certainly has a frantic edge near the end where you have to disarm a warhead before it can take out a US ship and plunge the world into World War III. Apart from that, it's pretty much business as usual by now with the whole routine of stealthing and completing objectives like getting some repair logs for Redding. In general, it's a pretty tense mission since the world's at the brink of war, like the commander's shooting the captain because they don't know what happened. My only real criticism is it's a little too straightforwarded for my liking, not even in a linear sense, but it feels like the game may have worn out its tricks by this point. It feels a little samey. Still, the overall tense atmosphere and the timer at the end certainly help to give you a sense of dread that the other missions up to this point haven't so much done. It's time to test the security systems in Displace. Bad news for people who like to play the stealth game guns blazing, because in this one, not killing is no longer a gentle suggestion. Mission's over if you off anyone here. I avoided killing most enemies anyway, so it was business as usual for me, although the server room has a bit of a scare if you aren't ready for it. The glass windows actually go between opaque and transparent if you EMP them, which is a neat function, but it mostly just lets you see into some of the offices, so it's not major. As always, there are some hilarious interrogations like Sam asking what coffee's in the machine to one guy or threatening to get blood all over the nice suit of another one. Between not having killing as a possible option, plenty of security cameras, and ways forward not always being quite so obvious, this one isn't super tough or anything, but it can throw you for a loop. It's time to brush up on our samurai history in Hokkaido. Well, spoilers, this is where things start to get spicy because Shetland, which confirms he's the bad guy, kills Zerkazy and Sam kills Myla Nettich. Talk about a wild ride. It's also amusingly a mission that contains anti-ninja floorboards, but it's easy to avoid and it's amusing interrogating the guard who's convinced there were ninjas there. The opportunity objective is still along the way, but it's not nearly as obvious since you need thermal to see the mic, so it was a bit trickier to do. At least if you fail to get Mylon's real name in the last one, it's actually really easy to do in this one since you just have to scan a couple of license plates in front of you. This one's good, a nice aesthetic to it, and it's interesting to see defenseless civilians in the mix, even if it can be a little annoying when they're weirdly looking around for you. It's time for the motion of the ocean and cargo ship. If the first mission was practice, this is where you have to go at it for real, since it has an alarm system and a few different obstacles like an engine room with a gas leak so nobody can fire any guns or boom. It also has some other interesting chains of events like having to use a pump to clear out an area so you can move forward and access the rest of the ship, and you also have to take care of a rat problem. It feels more open-ended too, since it's somewhat realistic to an actual cargo ship, which would have more than one way to enter an area. It's nice to have options for navigating the maze of metal corridors. If the lightning in the previous one threw you for a loop, this one even more, because there's moonlight that makes some areas flat out risky since you can't EMP out the moon. Overall, it's a good improvement, ties things up nicely with the most unlikable characters so far and can be pretty challenging, making me grateful for quick saves. It's time to go on a ski trip in Bank. Being a bank, it expectedly has cameras and lasers everywhere, including interestingly a set of lasers that guards disable as they get near it. As with the previous mission, it's very non-linear, having to get 3 access points, although 2 of them are next to each other, but nice to have options. One interesting thing is a laser unexpectedly turns on at the entrance of the vault that if you don't disable it has unique dialogue. Seeing it coming is satisfying. Speaking of the vault, you get a telemetric lock, which is basically just lockpicking where you have to wait for a green light as you go. Not exactly hard, but it's a neat one-off mechanic. Other than the one downside of waiting for numbers with the email hacks, I'd say this is a very good mission. Bank robberies and stealth fit like peanut butter and honey. It's time for Sam Fisher's chaotic evaluation. Believe it or not, I love Chaos Theory. It's actually one of my favorite games of all time, and in my opinion where the series peaks, keeping true to itself but refining it. Apart from the defusing in Bathhouse and Seoul Part 2 to a lesser degree, none of the rest of the game ever really frustrates me, and it feels great when you get those sap guards right where you want them. Interrogating is always funny too. It's one of the best parts of the game, hearing Sam bantering with some random guard and scaring them half to death. Though I don't make use of them most of the time, his equipment is also pretty dope, like a sticky camera to make noise and spit gas at guards, or a sticky shooter for taking people out. Splinter Cell was made to take on Metal Gear Solid, and I'd say Chaos Theory can more than give any of them a run for their money. I'd suggest playing it if you haven't already and want to get your spy on.